to lead, that the way ahead was not going to be a bed of roses. And if there were any doubting Thomases, they can now see where we are, and they can confirm that this is not a picnic. As I listen to us over the past couple of weeks, I have advised myself that there is need for us to draw some very clear demarcations between a revolution and a change of guard. I see that we tend sometimes to focus, as we talk about the next pressure points, about the removal of the custodians of a system. And as a student of political science and history, I advise myself that there is a wide path between a change of guard and a revolution. A change of guard without attempting to be patronizing, really, is when we remove the custodian who is there for the time being and bring in different custodians without addressing the fundamentals of the pillars that hold the system in place. I see that as Kenyan people, we have had very many false dawns. And Dr. Miguna has taken us through a chronology of turning points when our history has failed to turn. My interpretation as a student of politics, history, and international relations is that during all those vantage points that Dr. Miguna talks about, we have attempted to remove the custodians of the system, the gatekeepers, without varying the system itself. And therefore, as we go forward, I do agree that William Samoei Ruto is the custodian, is the person that we are addressing just now. But we must go beyond the person called William Samoei Ruto. We must clearly define what we want. And I think that the Gen Zs have been spot on. They have mentioned the changes that they want to see, so that they start leading us towards the kind of country that we want. Yet I see that even those, as they are put together and pushed through, if they will be, will not necessarily amount into a revolution. They could be piecemeal changes within the same existing system. I see that members of the political class are regrouping, and that starting tomorrow, we will have the custodians of the system coming together in a rehashed and choreographed kind of dialogical arrangement, at the end of which things which they have already pre-concluded will be cast before the nation as the outcomes of that so-called dialogue. And basically, it is protection of the status quo, which we must be conscious of, and which we need to stand up against. Now, as we say that, therefore, we have got to ask ourselves what our methods are going to be. I think the first speaker, I'm not so sure who she was, I found her going on, spoke about the need for non-violence. And I do think that the non-violent approach was the defining methodological departure from the earlier efforts, and it's been able to move us very significantly. When we say that such and such a date is going to be the 0 hour, it's going to be the moment that the guillotine will come down, I would urge us to speak a lot more about the methods that will make that happen rather than the characterization of the villains. We already know about the villains, and that is why we are engaging against them. And if more of our energy would go towards saying, so this is what we must do, and attempt to break it down. I'm afraid I will not pretend that I have got any fast and ironcast answers on what needs to be done. But I also know that when you have a formula that is working, you tend to continue to apply that formula. As you may think about other formulas, we have been occupying spaces, and we want to talk a lot more about occupying more spaces in a non-violent manner, barring which we would be talking about engaging as militias. And I doubt that that is the path that we want to engage with, certainly not for the time being, in my view. And so, what do we do to mobilize more people to come out if we are talking about revolution, and also defining very clearly that as we talk about a revolution, because for me, as a student of revolutions in world history, and there I can claim the right to speak ex cathedra because it's one of my areas of study and specialization. I understand revolutions in world history, and I would know that if you just substitute one individual with another, like we do in football, then you have not carried through a revolution. We must talk about a systemic change, and we must define the system that we want, and we must define the kind of leadership that we want, and we must define the kind of country that we want. And then we must also define probable and possible timelines. Then we can talk as a country, as Kenyans, as patriots, that we are pushing towards a revolution and that we are edging in to the expected outcomes. And so, therefore, finally, because I intend to keep my remarks fairly brief, we do well to recognize just two things that I want to conclude with. Number one, and I think it was Dr. Miguna who spoke about that, Gen Z must become a spirit rather than a physical, temporal definition and limitation of persons and groups in terms of age. Yes, the age factor has been important because this is a demographic that has galvanized the nation into action, but it must spread beyond that to become a spirit and to become a movement of like minded persons, regardless of what other descriptors and defining and limiting factors there could be about their identity. Let it be a spirit, let it be a movement that brings all and everybody who is like minded on board. And B, within final, is that I appreciate this notion of leaderless. Yes, I agree very much with the notion of tribeless, partyless, but I doubt that I could subscribe for too long on the notion of leaderless. I have studied revolutions in world history. I know, for example, that one of the reasons the 1848 revolutions in Europe failed was absence of clear leadership and absence of organization from France to Italy to Prussia and to other places where the revolutionaries attempted to put their act together. And in Africa, we have had failed quasi-revolutions because they have lacked a proper organization and leadership, and in the end, they have been hijacked by marauding vultures who have then gone on to perpetuate the systems that the people were trying to overthrow. So allow me to just limit my remarks for now to that so that we can also listen to wisdom from others. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Dr. Neto, do you want to chime in before Tabitha comes in? And I see Buka is raising his hand.
Yes, I have a few reactions.
Over to you. Go on, Buka.
Thank you. I've just been summing up some of the contribution of my fellow panelists, but just to contextualize them, I think there are three important things that if we do not do, then the chances of success are very limited. One, and it's that we must understand the enemy clearly. In fact, if we understand the enemy clearly, then we can define tactics and strategy to defeat the enemy. So this is important. And then what do we want to achieve? In our correct analysis, the enemy is a group of individuals, and they are a minority that consistently get support from certain foreign interests to impose policies upon the Kenyan people that are alien to the majority of those people, that are alien to the majority of the Kenyan people. That means President William Samoei Ruto is a representation of a class, a parasitic class that are rich, corrupt, but they do not produce anything. Now, once we classify the people in this country that act as conveyor belt for the international, imperialism, particularly now that people are even conscious about IMF and World Bank, IMF will not find a root in Kenya without such individuals. These people exist both in government and opposition. These are the criminals that we must defeat to access power. And to defeat them to access power, whether the current Kenya Kwanza administration falls or not, will depend on how intensively we are organized. And remember, we are not only seeking to overthrow the current status quo, but to overthrow them, we need to appeal to the broadest sections of the Kenyan masses. Because when they are under threat, they will want to divide us. And how are they dividing us now? Because even the rhetoric that the old people should not be able to comment because this is not their war is a reactionary perspective of the event. Because if we did not have our ancestors fighting to liberate this democratic space, if Dedan Kimathi was not hanged by the settler colonialism, then we will not be able to speak on this platform today. If the martyrs of the fight against dictator Moi's misrule, then we won't be on this platform. If the fight of those who martyred during the fight for the 2010 constitution, so the struggle does not move in a straight line, but also the struggle builds on generations. So the Gen Z are actually only fulfilling their historical task by advancing the struggle that was started for the majority of the Kenyan people since independence. What do we want to achieve? In our correct analysis, we want the Kenyan people to make a decision based on their own consciousness as Kenyan people. That means the fight is to complete our independence, to be able to free ourselves. Because without economic independence, we don't have sovereignty. What IMF and World Bank, together with in fact, President William Samoei Ruto and their class, they are so weak to oppress us. That is why they have to form alliances of repression and oppression with international capital and bring the army here for the United States, bring the army for the British here. And this is what we must continue to advance, that the Kenyan people want to make decision as the Kenyan people. Now, so that is what we are fighting for. On the ownership of the revolution, I like the way it has been carried out. But we must say that victory belongs to the masses. The victory always belongs to the Kenyan masses. And that only the person with the people shall carry the mantle of a true revolution. In fact, William Ruto got to capture the imagination of the youth through lies and platitudes. He managed to capture the seat narrowly, but he cannot sustain his win because his popular cause was actually based on platitudes, and lies to the general public. So for us to be able to sustain this momentum, we must continue to advance and appeal to the broader sections of the Kenyan masses to defeat the status quo. On compromises or hardliners, my comment is that those people who compromise with the criminal regime are actually part of that class. Remember, during independence, narrow nationalists like Jomo Kenyatta compromised with the colonial British to actually continue with the land theft and domination and to actually re-establish the neo-colonial system. So the people who want to negotiate with President William Samoei, the criminal that has shed too much blood in the Kenyan street, they do not have a problem with the current status quo. They are only envious that now President William Samoei Ruto is overseeing the affairs on behalf of the real enemy. But these people who want to compromise, they only see themselves occupying the positions of the white masters that are now the neo-colonial chieftaincies that we have in this country. So we must call those people who want us to compromise at this time and tell them that everything else that the Kenyan people have won, they have won it hard-won with their own blood. So we must never derail them by compromises with this illegitimate regime. Now, on personality, we have to know that even though President William Samoei Ruto is a Kalenjin, but he's the worst Kalenjin. Even though Gachagua is a Kikuyu, but is the worst Kikuyu. In fact, the system that we have in place makes sure that the most powerful positions in these countries are occupied with the most backward people. In fact, President William Samoei Ruto does not represent the interest of the Kalenjin community. The Mudavadi does not represent the interest of the Luya nation. Gachagua does not represent the interest of the Kikuyu nation. In fact, they represent the interest of a minority of those small nationalities that they continue to ride on their back and negotiate for political power. So they must be called out in terms of mobilization, that even when people talk about tribalists, like I'd rightly say, it is not per se that the objective reality people are tribalists, but they are tired of political elite that uses tribalism to divide them along ethnic lines. So they are rejecting that kind of tribalism. On dialogue and the MPs who voted yes, I think what we must hear that the MPs that voted yes are the enemies of the Kenyan people. But the MPs who voted no, they must be seen to represent the interest of the people. So they should be the first people to start filing an impeachment motion against this president, because they know for sure the Kenyan people will support it. But don't they just think they will be complacent by saying that, no, we voted no. That is not enough. They must then do more in terms of what the constitutional framework offers them to make sure that the person who has shed so much blood in the Kenya and is determined to kidnap us and to abduct us is removed from political power. And why we must win this war? Because when the storm, when actually the storm goes down, the amount of repression that the Kenya Kwanza is going to do upon us is going to be almost near death. So we are fighting a fight for survival. We are fighting a fight of life and death. If we leave President William Samoei Ruto to stay in power for an inch, once he re-establishes himself, he will massacre us, he will kill us, he will run around and actually collect the people he thought caused him this pain, and they will be sent down under. This is what we must tell the population, that the repression will not continue, will not stop after the rejection of the finance bill. In fact, he will be able to re-establish himself in power, just like Moi did after 1982. Did he not send people to exile? Did he not form torture chambers? So the reason why William Samoei Ruto must not stay any longer in power is also for preservation of the progressives and the revolutionaries that have been opposing his government all this time. That is why we say on Tuesday, we are asking the President William Samoei Ruto, because he knows them, he must provide the people that are abducted, the people that have been kidnapped, dead or alive. He has to produce them, so that at least from that clean sheet, even if we are charging him, we know we have the evidence of dead bodies on the table. But at the moment, when we don't have our loved ones, then we must continue to push on for that kind of thing. Now, on the attacks of who supported who, this is something that has been used to attack the people who are appealing to unite all the progressive forces. There are people who probably will have supported Ruto at that time. There are people who will have supported other people at that time. But if they genuinely come to the people's camp and then say that we realize we have made certain mistake and they are willing to fight on our side, then we must welcome them with jubilation and actually make sure that they can fight alongside us until the defeat of the primary enemy, because this is important. And then finally, on violence and non-violence. It is important because the state has sponsored a certain narrative that there were criminals in the streets. The truth of the matter that we must continue to say is that the violence that was on the streets as we were on the street was started by the organized violence of the state. When people rises up to do a peaceful march in this country, they are met with police batons. They are met with extreme violence of the police. Remember, on day 1 and day 2, there was a peaceful protest. And then day 3, they started to break the front. They are shooting rubber bullets, shooting live bullets. And the only way to break the barrier of the police until we reached parliament was to confront the police violence. And it took at least limited violence from the people who were on the street to make sure that they were able to break the 3 barriers to reach parliament. So we must understand that there is revolutionary violence and there is reactionary violence. We must not be ashamed to defend the people whose crime were only in the streets to defend this democratic space, but they were being shot at by live bullet. They were being shot at by tear gas canisters, by rubber bullets. They had to move to reach their destination, which was to present a petition in parliament. This is important for us. And when we go to the streets, we call upon the police to define the routes where people will go. We have always called upon the police to sit down with the organizers, but they obviously refuse. In fact, Bungei, that is still serving in the police force, and the IG that has resigned, they will not accept a peaceful protest because they want to use the opportunity to brutalize the people. So we must continue to debunk what violence and what non-violence, because then we cannot behave like in Njeketile Rebellion, where the white man was shooting at us with bullets, and then they were spraying water, like witchcraft on them. This is something that we must continue to debunk. Otherwise, my conclusion with this submission, that comrades, let us open doors to consult widely, to build an outcome in terms of an organization of national that has a national that cuts across all stratas of interest in this country, and prepare for a post-Ruto era by having a government that can respond to the people. Why are we asking President William Ruto to fire people? After he's gone, we can actually fire them all and recruit people who can serve us. Why are we asking the President Ruto, who has continued to defy the constitution, to implement the constitution? When we have a pro-people government, the constitution will be implemented to serve the majority of the people. So the actual thing is we go to the real enemy, finish the real enemy, overhaul the system, and roll out a pro-people government. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Buka. Let's have Tabitha speak, then Neto, and then Anthony, and then we'll open the mic to other speakers. Hilary, I see your mic is on. Go on.
Yeah, I think Tabitha dropped. I don't know. And Neto, can you hear us or you're hanging? Because I'm just wondering what is happening. I think Neto is also
Neto
hanging.
I think Neto is also dropped from technical issues. Neto, would you kindly then just
he should drop and come back.
Yeah.
Drop Neto, then come back. So
I think Maj, let Anthony go because he's representing the Gen Z group.
Okay, Anthony, over to you.
And he has really been on the list.
Hello, am I audible to everyone?
Loud and clear.
Okay. First of all, I'm a millennial, but let me just take this opportunity to thank you for opening this wonderful space where we get to exchange ideas on the Kenya we want and the country we want to have. I've had several people, Miguna, Anthony Gashoka, talk about the Ruto they know, which I believe is something we should all focus on. Anytime you're going to either take part in sport or politics or even war, you first of all must appreciate your opponent. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses and all that? Ruto is not president by accident. He was strategic about it. He planned about it. And I believe he believes he knows what exactly he wants to achieve in this regime that he is leading. Our differences between us who are agitating for change are more of ideological differences. We all agree we want better accountability. We all agree we want a very deliberate fight on corruption. We all agree we need to stop seeing the blatant plunder of our country. We also need to agree that all movements that changed the course of a nation were started by young people. From the Mau Mau to repealing Section 2A to the Katiba movement to what we are doing right now. What I feel we are missing is a structure. Because for us to advance in any way, we need a structure so that we know in which direction are we all going. I just feel we are moving in very many directions at the same time. I also feel that we are not taking advantage of the small wins we get. And I'll go back to something I think someone alluded to, that come this Monday, tomorrow, a group of 150 people will sit down somewhere in this country, I don't know whether it's KICC, and they will start picking the next IEBC. Still, next week, the cabinet will be announced, I think by Thursday or Friday. For us who are agitating, will our choice, our voice, our aspirations be represented on the IEBC we want to see? Will the same things, the ideologies we want, be represented on the cabinet that is going to be selected? Because he did say that he will consult. But I noted clearly, he said political parties, church leaders, civil society. He never mentioned the Gen Z movement anywhere. For us to be able even to feel we are winning, because I believe in any move, any agitation worldwide, study history for as far back as we can go. Anytime you gain ground, you need to learn to live. I'll appreciate, yes, appreciate that we need to leave our foot soldiers, people who represent our ideas and what we want. Right now, we are gaining ground, but we're just moving. We are leaving no one behind to say what we want. My other point is,
Could you try to land in the next 1 minute and just a clarification?
Actually, I am.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm on my last point.
Yes, and then Dr. You're gonna be next. Yeah.
I'm on my last point.
Okay, please go.
Next is someone, I think it was Booker, who talked about how we demonstrate and the way we need to demonstrate. Personally, I feel we can have two fronts. We can have the street movement, which, if I was asked, we need to strategize on how do we prevent hired goons from penetrating what we are doing. And this is why most people switched to a strategy of a peaceful way of demonstrating. And I'll give an example. When Takna Shinawatra was being overthrown, all those people did was sit down on tarmac. You choose major roads, the road to Treasury, the road to Parliament, and the road to the airport. Okay? If you sit on those roads, how can a goon penetrate that? If today government comes and starts tear gassing people who are sitting down, then the world will say, hey, that's not right. These people are peaceful. They are asking for you to listen. But so long we continue doing things, and General is here, Miguna, so long we continue doing things the Raila way, we are going to the streets, we will lose because we are fighting an intellectual. We need to fight an intellectual battle. We use brute force where it's needed, and we use intellectual muscle where it's needed.
Yeah.
Those were my only points.
Thank you so much, Anthony. Over to you, Dr.
Thank you, Maj. I really like the ideas that are flowing in. I would like to comment just briefly, but I'll start with what Ruto said today. Ruto said, with his chest out, I'm fully in charge. That's what he was saying. As a strategist and a revolutionary, when you hear someone in power saying, I'm fully in charge, it's actually a declaration of, I'm completely not in charge. So that's what Ruto was saying. I'm completely not in charge. Because for you to say you are in charge, you don't have to say it. People should see that you are in charge. We know for a fact that Ruto is very, very weak and cornered. Now, to dial back to what Barack Muluka said and what Buka said, both of them are correct. Ruto and his regime and his collaborators are the ones that are the immediate target of the revolution. But the revolution will not be complete if we do not overhaul the entire neo-colonial imperialist structures that were put in place to keep the African down. And that is why it is not just a Gen Z revolution. Because when you are reconstructing a country, I saw somebody produce a very beautiful map saying under construction or under renovation, Kenya, the map of Kenya. When you are renovating, when you are reconstructing, when you are overhauling, whatever word you want to choose, of an entire political, economic, cultural, social structure, because that's what we will be doing, it means that it will not take a day, and it means you're not doing it for one generation. It means you're not doing it for yourselves. It means it is classless. It means it is tribeless, because the country is for all of us. And we must do this for the future generations that have not yet been born, that are yet to be born. And for the past heroes that have died for the changes and the transformative results that we are seeking. That's what we are doing it for. The justice we are seeking, as I have always said, is justice as far back as Pio Pinto Gama, as far back as the ones the British killed, many of them, and as far back as the children and innocent civilians that Kenyatta mowed down at the former Russia hospital in Kisumu, as far back as the people Moi killed during the 1982 coup, as far back as those who were tortured in Nyayo House and were thrown from windows, as far back as those who died in exile during Kenyatta, during Moi, during Kibaki. There were people who went to exile during Kibaki. Remember, there were hundreds and thousands who crossed the border from Busia and from many other parts in Western Kenya to go into Uganda. Some of them never came back. A lot of us do not want to remember this. We cannot forget the people that died in 2007, 2008, 2013, 2018, 2017, and as recently as last year, when the police went all over Nyanza, all over Kibera, all over the residences in Nairobi, took people from their homes, killed them in Sondu area. We cannot forget these people. We cannot, for the life of us, only remember Rex. No, we remember all of them. Let's do this for generations past, for generations now, and for generations in the future. Then we will get somewhere. I think it is wrong to say that we get out of the streets. The streets is where the liberation must be obtained. That's our space. Kenya, the entire country, whether it is the streets in the urban centers, whether it is in the villages, wherever it is, we have to encourage Kenyans to come out everywhere and occupy everywhere. So if some people occupy streets, so be it. But we have to occupy the CBD of Nairobi, because that's the area where power resides in the Republic of Kenya. So we cannot encourage people, we cannot discourage people from coming out. We should be encouraging them to come out in large numbers. I will, however, disagree with Booker on impeachment. We do not want impeachment. That's a futile exercise. It will not happen. All members of parliament have been voted, the ones who voted no and the ones who voted yes. We are going to have to replace the entire political class currently occupying institutions of power, because they are all on the same side. I say on the same side because if you listened over their speeches over the weekend, if you listen to ODM and Azimio people speaking from Kakamega, if you listen to them speaking from the KICC with Ruto, they are reorganizing, they are rebranding, they are strategizing on how to take over this revolution, this movement, so that they can come in with people, imposters, youth from all over the country that are going to do their bidding. These youth do not represent the revolutionaries on the street, the ones who have died, the ones who have been abducted, the ones who have been tortured. So we have to be very clear. If we are rejecting and we are overhauling the entire system, we cannot at the same time say that we want them to go to the same rotten National Assembly that passed Finance Bill 2024 to impeach Ruto. That would be witchcraft. They will not be able to impeach Ruto. We want parliament disbanded, and we are going to do it. Just like you said correctly, that why are we asking for Ruto to fire so-and-so? We remove him with the entire regime, which means we fire everybody, plus we fire the opposition that is fortifying them. So I will end by saying, I think the next pressure point is Tuesday, that we should come out in large numbers so that if Ruto is going, and by Ruto I mean the entire regime, is going to die by cardiac arrest, so be it. Let's cause that cardiac arrest to happen as soon as possible. Let's remove these people. Let's then transform this the system of governance. But we cannot do it, of course. The strategy of doing that will not be done on the spaces, because they are here. I've actually seen my friend Murkomen is here and other people from State House. So people are listening to us, and it is good that they are here because I think they need to listen to us. And they need to know that what they're trying to do now is too little too late. We are not interested. That is something they should have done 2 years ago when they were sworn into power. They failed to do that. They showed us that they were not interested. They were not capable. They are not competent. They are, in terms of integrity, they are incurably defective. And so the people have resorted to take back the power that we donated to them and are now exercising that power. And Tuesday should be the final push when they all are removed from power. I will yield the mic.
Thank you so much, Dr. Before we proceed to NATO, I would just like to underline that indeed the only opposition we have in the country is the population. And the unfortunate event that happened, unfortunate but also fortunate, is that when there was signing in or the IBC topic there, the opposition actually, who was supposed to be defending the country, came and joined the ruling party. And it was unfortunate, but at the same time, very fortunate, because then the people would see that these, they're on their own, actually. That was the message they communicated right there. So for this, I believe also any process going through the same, parliament would not go through. Another thing I wanted to highlight, that was at the very beginning, Dr. talked about communication and information where people were attacking each other, and there were a lot of propaganda going on. In the recent times, we've seen, actually it was my very first time that I saw any country beating Russia with the propaganda. At the very beginning, they really floored them. Russia came and caught up later. So in war, there's power in information. What I find very unfortunate is that if A says this is happening, instead of people coming to prove A wrong, they come and attack A and say, no, he's lying. And so there's a risky situation in Kenya at the moment, because we have this side saying this side saying one thing, the other side saying the other thing. The government itself cannot be trusted with information. So we have really a vacuum that's really leading to a lot of misinformation. I hope the LSK is going to step up. I hope so far the public seem to be trusting them more, but we need a clear, when something happens, we need a body coming up and say, this is what we believe to be true because of ABC. That will give the public more trust, and then we'll end up having, we'll end up having a better situation than now. Now it's chaotic. Over to you, Neto.
Thank you very much, Maj. And I'm conscious of the fact that after this, you'd like us to give open mic. But there are three things that I'd like to state. I think Dr. Muluka and General Miguna, their minds have met to the extent that really this particular revolution needs to be a collective. That, people of all generations need to come up together and, we do this together. But more instructive is General Muluka sharing with this history of revolutions, to the extent that, if it's leaderless, then of course it takes too long to deliver. So I think that's a point that we need to take into consideration. But I also think that matches with what Buka said in terms of, expanding all the voices in the streets into a formidable and organized structure. Having said that much, let me say three things. Number one, what the people of Kenya are doing is constitutional. There is nothing unconstitutional about what we are doing. It is because, and I'm happy that Tony Gashoka was really was on top of it, when he said, when he took us to Article 4 of the Constitution. But I want to expand it slightly a bit more and point out 4 or 5 articles of the Constitution. The first one is the article that gives sovereignty to the people. And that article says that the people shall exercise their sovereignty directly, and where sometimes or may delegate. So of course, that sovereignty was delegated to the Houses of Parliament, has been delegated to the executive. But we think that the executive is not running the country in the manner that we had hoped that he does that. What did he do? Article 10 aspirations in terms of national values, national core values have not been taken into consideration. Article 73, Article 74, 75, 76 of the Constitution with regard to national integrity and integrity of leadership has not been taken into consideration. So therefore, the Kenyan people are saying, within the means and province of the Constitution, Article 37, we shall peacefully and unarmed present a petition to you, the presidency, telling you that you are not running the country in the way that we want to run. All this is very constitutional. So we hope that the presidency can then see within the meaning of Article 146, which provides for the president may and should resign, because then the people of Kenya are saying, we gave you a mandate, you've not been able to deliver on that particular mandate. So all this is very constitutional, and no one should ever say that the people of Kenya are acting extra-constitutionally. Having said that, there is a conversation that is ongoing, and I'm happy that General Miguna just said that right now. We do not, it's God is on the side of the people of Kenya. For those who are not believers in God, you'll permit me. 2-3 years ago, the former Chief Justice on the province of Article 2617 of the Constitution did declare this particular parliament unconstitutional and should have been dissolved. Now, those of you who have had a chance to read that particular ruling, it is a ruling and a judgment that is supposed to be in perpetuity for all parliaments. So that this particular parliament in itself is illegal, it's unconstitutional. And what we really need to do, that's my pointer one in terms of pressure point, is we just need to ask for a decree that this particular parliament then is dissolved. What does that do for us? It does a couple of things, because if you look at when the presidential election needs to be done, the presidential election is then envisaged to take place at the same time as the election of the members of parliament. So that is already a very, very easy process. In fact, you don't even have to struggle. You don't even have to crack our heads. We just need to push in the next couple of weeks for a decree for the Supreme Court to declare that this particular parliament is unconstitutional, as was decided in 2010, dissolve it. And when you dissolve it, the presidency has to seek fresh mandate within the meaning of Article 146, as read together with Article 102 and Article 104 of the Constitution. But let me tell you the second thing that I wanted to say. Anyone who studied history, and Barack Muluka and colleagues are here, you must already agree that this Kenya Kwanza regime is going to fall. And this was bound to happen. And it was going to happen for whatever regime that was coming in place and was not going to deliver on the people of Kenya. Number one, those who've studied how the mighty persons fall, whether it's regimes, whether it's companies, you will see they walked us through the 4 or 5 stages of falling of mighty people. The first was their hubris. You saw it all, people flagging off very many serious things, feeling all important, high-flying people. The second, of course, was the indisciplined pursuit for more. The third stage, which I think is what I want to emphasize, and I do the fourth one, was the denial of the risk and the peril. You remember when they came to the streets and said the Gen Zs were digital wankers, who could not do anything. They said all manner of unpalatable things. That was basically denying the risk of denial. Now, where we are with Kenya Kwanza and the William Ruto regime is where it is critical. And I think that's what I want to point out, even as we think about the next pressure point. It is on the fourth point, the fourth stage. Of course, mighty people falling is a stage 5 process, but the fourth stage is what was instructive. They're grasping for salvation. And if they're grasping for salvation, it therefore means that they have two things. One, that decline and capitation is very possible, and that is what it should do. Or a bit, if at all they get some resuscitation, then the status quo might remain. But if you look at history, the number of people who've survived the stage 4 fall, apart from Winston Churchill, they're not very many. So that it is possible that even the dalliance that the old regime is trying to give President Ruto and his regime in terms of dialogue and stuff like that, that is not going to be maybe possible. It's not going to be possible to resuscitate them. So in terms of anyone who studied history, I think the conversation is not if the Ruto regime is going to fall. No. The thing is, when is it going to fall? That is the conversation we must have. And that is why, with a bit more pressure point, and that's why I want to move on to the third point, which is what Anthony liked what Anthony was saying, that we must put pressure where it matters most. We must focus the next kind of speakers in terms of where would the pressure matter most. Anthony had this proposal in terms of, if we have sit-ins across major streets, what do we do as the next probable stage of action so that at least we cascade, we fast track this? Because again, if you take too long without pushing this regime off the cliff, then you really have a problem of fatigue, many casualties. The sooner we do it, the better, and it's going to be easier. But that it is going to fall is a no-brainer. The reason why Kenyans are saying that the Kenya Kwanza regime must fall is because of how they structured their political economy. I think it's also good. It is nothing personal. It is nothing about any particular tribe. It's nothing about any particular person. It is the way they reign the political economy. It has been founded on patronage. It has been founded on corruption. It has been founded on middlemen. And, they've encroached and they practiced the rent-seeking behavior in a manner that made rule of law and constitutionalism not possible. And that is why, and I agreed with Gen Zs, we are saying we must push off this particular regime simply because of two reasons. They are not believing in constitutionalism. They're not believing in the rule of law. Whoever takes up power after this regime falls off must then take us back to the 2010 constitution. Let's leave those aspirations. Let us agree that Kenya is going to be run on the basis of Article 1, which is supremacy of the people, with all the aspirations of the Constitution 2010, because that is then, for me, what I think will then move us forward. So then moving forward, we must agree, how do we accelerate the next conventions? How do we accelerate the fall of this particular regime? Because we're going to fall anyway. The sooner we do it, the better for us. And then at least we say how then we plan our post-Kenya Kwanza regime organizing. Thank you very much, Maj. Maybe you can give the mic for the next person. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you so much, Honorable Lento, as much coming in. Yeah, let us have ladies on board. Mkasi umenyamaza sana, but I can see Tabitha is back. She dropped. Tabi, can you go ahead?
Thank you, Hilary. Maj, you are doing a great work in hosting us in this space and making sure that balance is also achieved well at it. I would really want to also just weigh in my condolence to the families that have been affected by the recent finding of the dead bodies. We can't account for why they had to undergo such indecent way of killing and who are the perpetrators. And I think as we talk about the pressure points, we need to, call the bodies that are in charge of making sure that Kenyans are protected, and in that we are not supposed to just be dying, and we cannot even, account for circumstances that resulted to that. So I think we need to really call the bodies that are in charge of giving us protection and also making sure that national security is attained. We need to call them accountable and give them pressure to also give us this report that they keep saying they're forming committees to look into issues that regards to, violation of human rights and we've seen a lot of killings even during the demonstrations, that we need them to tell us exactly what are some of the steps that are going to be taken for the people who are found guilty, and even those who have been caught on cameras, national police that were taking part in the demonstrations, and they shot some of the demonstrators live with live bullets. Some of them were seen stepping on their necks. Some of them were seen doing very inhumane, ways of, trying to silence the voices of very peaceful protesters. So we have to see some of this conversation also taking place. We need to call these people accountable. So that we are able to also, as we go towards a free Kenya, a Kenya where all of us enjoy equal human rights conditions, these particular bodies that are in charge of giving us protection need to be held into account as a pressure point. I want to say that it's very good that I've seen the co-hosts and the hosts really giving us direction when it comes to also, this space being objective and just discussing exactly what we really need to see moving forward, other than characters and people already. Some of them we know exactly who they are. So now what is important for us as Kenyans is to, for example, see and offer recommendations on what we would want. Now, one of the biggest problems we have in this country is corruption and the pandemic. It's more of a pandemic. We need to see the government declare this as a pandemic and have the EACC fast track all corruption cases and close them within 3 months, so we see how much we are able to recover from, the looted and embezzlement of public funds from, even this the cabinet secretaries whom have left power. We need to fast track and see what have we lost when they're in the offices. What did we lose, for example, when AJAABU Namamba was the CS in charge of the sports ministry? What did we lose, for example, when Nakumincha was a very boastful CS who could go even to a village and fire the OCPD in that area, and she was a minister of health. What did we lose in these particular ministries? Because we have lost money in billions, and so we need to now call this particular government that we're also trying to make it leave power as it does the same. We need to see that the bodies which they are eating already our money, because you see they're being paid. The EACC need also to be held accountable. We need them to give us some of these cases that have resulted to these public offices embezzling a lot of money for Kenyans. I think with that we will be able to also have justice for what we work so hard for, and the taxes highly. I think also any leader whose department is accused of misappropriation and embezzlement of funds must step aside until all investigations are done. So then we also want to see that this government that is I think illegitimate at the moment, because the people have made their voice very loud, and they have said that they have no confidence on this government. We have to call the government officials who are still in offices, whether they're in parastatals, whether they're running, even government agencies, and even the governors who have been found culpable. We have seen EACC coming up with reports, and the in-sitting governors whom their counties have been seen to misappropriate funds, they're still sitting in those, offices, and they cannot account for the millions of money that are Kenyan money. They're not able to do projects for the people, and we do not see any legal action being taken against them. So we need to give these bodies that are charged with like the EACC, they need to do their work. We are calling on them to do their work, because as we call the government of the day to go home, they are still having salaries. So as they are at it, then if they're not able to do our work, then we can go and occupy the EACC, so that we are able also to, have these bodies do their work. Now that we have the CSS that were appointed, sent home, as we still call on the president, whom we are also trying to make sure that he goes home at the end of the day, will appoint other CSS. So while at it appointing the CSS, there is no point in time that he should, by any point, appoint, for example, the cabinet secretary that is in charge of sports, for example, should come from somebody who has been a sports person with a very successful sports career, shown that they have the capacity to lead and bring transformation to the sports ministry, and that we are supposed to see that not for only few people, but it's supposed to help the youth, and the youth are supposed to feel that the department that is charged with making sure that talents are nurtured, and also Kenya talent space and things like that are taken care of. We have to see people competent. If we are looking at, for example, the CS of health, we are not supposed to have a CS who already, by all chances, have a questionable academic credential. That person cannot even know what the issues around health are. We need to see somebody who has practiced as a doctor or as health practitioner, with ears showing credibility. They need to do a background search, so that we are not able to bring also other people who have integrity issues in the name of political affiliation to this space. And I think it goes ahead to even look at the other ministries and departments. We need to see that. I think another key thing, we need to have everybody that has been employed during the tenure of one Felix Kosgei, there need to be looked at in terms of the ethical imbalance, so that we ensure there is a balance in the civil service based on the census of Kenya 2019 and of qualifications of people, because we have to live to the fact that there are many there are tribes who are more dominant in the employment spaces, especially during this tenure of the President Ruto, where we see one tribe holding key positions in terms of CEOs, even in the government parastatals. It cascades down even to the normal employees in the civil service. We need to have a review of the employment. We have to look at and review what are the qualifications and has it met the threshold for ethnicity balance, because as we talk about unemployment even amongst the youth, then we need to look at how all of them get a position, especially if these people have gone to school, they have the qualification that they deserve. Not one tribe should be getting more government jobs. I think another pressure point for me as an individual, and I'm speaking on my behalf on what I would really like to, push to happen, is that these counties, as we talk about occupying them, they actually need to be occupied. Now, the occupation, the auditors now, this ESCC need to send the auditors down to the counties. So we need to know that these counties, how much have we been losing during this administration under these governors? What are some of the malpractices that are taking part in these counties? Of course, we know amongst them big is corruption. Bigger ones are even nepotism, and the list continues, because you see the problem that happens at national government. They have even cascaded down here to devolution. I mean, corruption has been devolved greatly. So we need to hold the county government also very accountable. So I think as a guideline towards the pressure points, given other factors and what the great speakers have said today, now we need to have clear as we leave the space today, as we go to Occupy on Tuesday, what are the key pressure points that we need to go and look at as we occupy the counties? Then what is the direction? So if we can have individuals here who maybe by chance already have records of what, for example, say a county where I come from, what are some of the things we need to look at as we go occupying the county and amongst other counties, then it would be a good guideline for the people whom will take part in this operation, which myself, I'll be there. I'll be at the center. I've always been there, especially here from where I'm speaking in my county. So then we are able to call out even the vices in the county. And as we clean this government and we demand for a better governance space, for better leadership in this country, I'm telling you, it has to start from the bottom. So we have to also hold, we have to have maybe even civic engagement with the people on the ground and get to even understand what is happening on our ward, so that as we call out bad governance and we talk about an administration which is not functioning, and we are calling out for better as people of Kenya because we deserve better. I had when Ruto was campaigning, he said wajinga wameisha Kenya, na ni ukweli kwa sababu tumeisha. And at the same point, he was trying to take us for fools, but he has realized that really Kenyans are not like people in other countries, in other East African countries, whom they know that they're being taken for a ride and they're still just staying there. And so we want to really understand that we are not just doing this in Nairobi, but even at the counties, as we upscale this and we demand for better. What are some of the pressure points? But as I finish my submission, so that I allow other great speakers also and contributors to weigh in, I would like to say that we cannot win this particular revolution if we are not going to relook at the ways of or the strategies, because as we are talking at the government. Can you hear Tabitha?
I think she's dropped.
Okay. So sorry, Tabitha, for that. I don't know what happened there.
I can't hear Tabitha. I think there's a problem with
So, Kingsman, there was somebody who was, there's a lady who was to come before you, but I cannot see her anymore. Please go. And to all the guest speakers, should you want to chime in at any point, just raise your hand and then I'll see and let you go. Kingsman, over to you. Kingsman, can you hear me? Okay. Kingsman cannot hear me. Just let me add more speakers to the panel. Meanwhile, Neto, over to you. As I add ladies, I want to add more ladies. Okay.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I thank Tabitha for already like pointing us towards some of the pressure points, and I like that even as you speak, we've agreed that this particular regime is collapsing. The counties therefore becomes another focus because of the rule of law, corruption issues that the countries have gone through. So I mean, part of the strategy would be if we could spread, the forces. If we could spread the forces too thin, the police and the armed forces. The thinner we spread them across the 47 counties, even as we focus in the city CBD, like General Miguna proposes, I think that would be very good for us. So that we must accelerate the speed and the number of days that we take with this regime before it collapses as we move forward to the next republic. Thank you. Mej, are you giving someone else to speak?
Yes. Esperance, kindly take a go. And now we've opened the mic to the floor to everyone. We'd like to restrict to 2 minutes each so that everyone can speak. And I think we are going to end at the top of the hour because the three hours are going to be over. So Esperance, over to you. And then Lady Justice. Yeah.
Thank you very much. I'll be as brief as possible. I just wanted to add to whatever Tabitha was saying when it comes to representation. For a very long time, when Uhuru and Ruto were elected in 2013, what they wrote on was youth. They called themselves youth. Or you see, like even the cabinet secretary, someone like AJAABU Namwamba, he's been Christ and youth. Because somebody is youthful looking does not mean they are youth. So for a very long time, we've had people riding on being youthful and masquerading as youths, yet they're just youthful and at the expense of other young people. So even as we forge forward, I think it's important that young people, as the Gen Zs, we continue to lead this. We really have young people coming to the front and being supported as much as you people are doing. Realize we have millennials and other people. So we really have to bring these young people on board in all honesty, in all conversations. Sorry, Madge, I can see you raising your hand.
Yes, Esperance, just a moment. I forgot to explain. So for the 2 minutes, when I raise my hand, then it means that 1 minute is over and the speaker has another minute to wind up. Kindly proceed.
All right, thank you very much. Yeah, so as a feminist, I'd also want to say I'd want women to be brought aboard this movement. Not to be brought a lot, but to also lead. I've seen Tabitha and the works she does in Siaya. And I've seen, I think I wasn't ready to speak. I don't know how I got here. Thank you very much. Let me continue following.
No, Esperance, I actually can gaze what's going on. It has been very emotional. And that's why I'd like to encourage everyone not to downplay the mental weight of what is going on here. So Kingsman and then Komwanza.
Kingsman, are you connected really?
Kingsman
Mark,
cannot
I
hear
don't know
me
if
now.
you guys can hear me.
Yes,
Can
now.
you go ahead? Kingsman. No.
Okay.
Give Lady Justice or Mukawasi, or who is going next, Marge?
Komwanza and then Lady Justice.
Okay.
Komwanza, can you hear me? Kindly unmute your mic.
Me?
Okay. Mukawasi, Dr. Mukawasi, I can hear you. Please go.
Oh, okay, thank you. Just a small comment I would like to make that was about countering propaganda, because this is going to happen a lot as you keep on going. For example, countering the charge of anarchy. Now, this goes to the idea of how to come against pro-regime propaganda. And I'm told there's a group of opportunistic persons who've been trying to paint the unfolding revolution as anarchy. I would say there's a need for us to resist the reaction of being defensive, and have enough information when propaganda comes around. For example, ask them what they understand by anarchy. If they mean chaos, remind them that the beginning of this revolution, and every time Kenyans rose up to demand a better country, the people turned up unarmed. It's always been the regime and its tools of power who injected chaos. I think this was made clear by Booker. If they mean anarchy as a form of governance, teach them that many African communities that were not kingdoms were organized around anarchical system. And it simply means a government that rejects coercion and authoritarian hierarchy. These kind of places we were in used to be peaceful, and they thrived until external intervention happened. Like I know of systems like my own people where the buying and selling of land amongst ourselves was profitable, and that worked smoothly until the forces of colonization decided to give our land to other people, to the queen or whoever it was they gave it to. So those who do not know this history will believe we did not have existing healthy anarcho-capitalist systems regulated by councils of elders, where no one was homeless. Now look at where we are now. So if you need this leaderless space to strategize and solidify the revolution, let no one tell you you are chaotic, and press on. You are at a critical point of establishing foundations that will sustain you. Your leadership roles will become clear as you figure out who your friends are, who your enemies are, who you need to work with, who you need to have at the core. I'll just give you one example. Historically, there was one country, Republic of Kospaya, that successfully ran an anarchical government for almost 400 years. And they were so successful, they were so free that the Pope decided to end it all. And I'm not saying this so that we can adopt this kind of system for Kenya. No, I'm just giving this example as arsenal for you to push back on propaganda and insults like being called anarchist and chaos, which would mean violent. Just reject the propaganda and move on, figure out how to get information that can counter what propaganda that is coming at you. It has so far been inspirational to the rest of Africa. This revolution has. So keep the pressure on towards achieving the Kenya where every human life is sacrosanct. That is so important. Start by mourning every single life. Start by having a space where everybody who's killed, abducted, extrajudicial killings that have happened, that person is on a space and their names are there, never forgotten. And this is radical. Changing the idea that the lives we have are not important. They are very important. So just keep mobilizing and organizing. Solidify your strategies and stay on mission. Thank you. Over to you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Terry. And now we moved. Actually, before I move to the next speaker, the point that you talk about of, countering the propaganda, I must say that this is one that's really not easy, especially when people are, the topic is very emotive and people don't even have time to react to or to synthesize one event. Then the next event comes and it just, it swims out there. And I see that online. I see people reacting, even turning around and starting to even attack the people they're working with just because of propaganda. So I hope you can probably share of the comment section. I don't. For those who have time to read some literature there, then I think they will just sit down and take, even if it's 20 minutes per day, to just read and get accustomed to that. Thanks so much for that contribution. We go to Kingsman. Are you able to speak now? Otherwise, you go to Lady Justice.
Yes. I'm able to speak now.
Please go, and then Lady Justice is next. Yeah.
Okay. Now, mine, first of all, to those that have come in now, I want to greet you all. Hope you are well. Mine is just to emphasize on the points that our key speakers, Dr. Barak, Dr. Miguna, have spoken about. Kinabuka is, first of all, there's something that Dr. Barak has spoken about, that we need to define clearly what we want as a people in terms of governance. And if either we want a regime change or it's a revolution, then if it is a revolution, there is something that is key, whereby we need to change our system of governance, because I think that is the elephant in the room, and that is what has brought us here. The people who gave us the 2010 constitution, they gave us a very good document that focused so much on human rights, but there is a place I think we were played on. We were played in terms of representation, and we were given one of the most expensive constitutions in the world. If you look at representation at the county level, representation at the constituency level, I think the number of legislators that we have in the country can represent the whole of Africa, even 2 or 3 continents. If you look at the numbers, we have 416 members of parliament. That is now at the Senate, and then at the August House, that is where the MPs reside. We have 290 MPs, 47 women rep as of to date, and I'm not gender biased. I'm still unable to understand what their roles are in the society, and their. If you look at the both divide of the political class that we have in Kenya, they are just there as flower girls. They are literally doing nothing. If you go to the MCAs, we have 25, 26, 14, 50 elected, and the others are they come from. I see most are appointed or nominated by the parties. They actually have got nothing to do, so that the likes of Alai, the only thing they do nowadays, instead of going around doing the work that they are ought to have done as per the constitution, they are blogging for Ruto. That is what they have become. We have a very expensive constitution and members of parliament, whereby we need 20 billion annually in order to continue servicing this part of this arm of government. If you take the money that we are paying these people like annually, you can. If you take the 20 billion that we pay the member of parliament, you can build 143 primary schools every year at a budget of around 20 million. You can either build another 500 secondary schools every year at a budget of 40 million shillings per secondary school. You can build 100 district hospitals every year. You can be at a budget of around 200 million shillings. 50 million shillings in terms of health centers. You can build 6 national state-of-the-art hospitals in the country if you take that money. So there's something I was pondering about, and this alludes to what Muluka was talking about governance. Why should we have people?
Can anyone hear Kingsman? I cannot hear him.
No, I think
He
you dropped.
Oh my gosh, the IT over here is no, I don't know. Anyway, so Hillary, do you want to chime in before we bring in?
No.